Okay, we're ready to start the first Friday video for you. Now, what you'll need to do is you need to watch this video. You can always pause it and copy things down and take notes and then unpause it and kind of keep going. And then there's some homework that's on Moodle that goes with this. Now, this particular video is just a continuation of what we're doing on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we started factoring. So remember, all the time when you're factoring, your first step is to see if there's a common term that you can pull out. Now, sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. Even if there is a common term to pull out, you may not be finished. So if you've got a binomial left, remember a binomial's got two terms in it, and you've got a quadratic, then look and see maybe if you can use one of those special formulas like a squared minus b squared, or a cubed minus b cubed, or a cubed plus b cubed. They only started with the trinomials toward the end of class, and we talked about the quadratic formula. And if you're going to use the quadratic formula, it's always x minus in a parenthesis and x minus. And then the numbers that you get out of that quadratic formula go after the minus. We'll do one of those on this video just to kind of make sure you're clear about that. Now, another way to do a trinomial, though, is by trial and error. Now, some of you know some other ways like tic-tac-toe and some other things, and you're welcome to use any of those things that work. But I'm going to kind of show you some trial and error ways if you like that better than like the quadratic formula, okay? Sometimes it's faster. So I'm just going to share a PowerPoint with you, maybe. Let's give it a whirl, see if I can get it to kind of come up here, okay? And I'll kind of talk you through it real quick. All right, so we're talking about factoring using trial and error. Remember, a trinomial's got three terms in it. So if it's a trinomial, like this one's got, 1, 2, 3 terms, that one's got 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Now I'm going to kind of go over these, and then you might want to stop the video and take notes before you go further. So there are three kind of things that matter. The first thing that when I look at the problem, the first thing I look at is the very last term. And I look to see whether it's got a plus in front or a minus in front, because that tells me what to do. So if it's got a minus in front, like this one and this one, then I know that in my parenthesis, I'm going to have one plus and one minus, okay? So if the sign in front of the last term is negative, if there's a minus operator, then in the parenthesis, one has a plus and one has a minus. Now, if the last term is positive, the last term has a plus in front of it, then the middle terms match. It's either a minus in both or a plus in both, okay? So the last term tells you kind of what goes in the operator that goes in the parenthesis. So if it's a minus, you've got one of each. If it's a plus, they match. Now, how do you know whether they're both plus or whether they're both minus? Well, this kind of clarifies it, all right? If the last term has got a plus, like this one and this one, look what's in front of your middle, your linear term, okay? If the middle term has a minus in front of it, like here, they'd both be minuses. If the middle term has a plus in front of it, they'd both be pluses. So if you've got a minus in front of your last term, you got one of each. If you've got a plus in front of your last term, they match. They're either both plus or both minus, and they match whatever that middle term is. So once you write your parentheses down with the pluses or minuses in there, then how do you know what numbers to put in? Well, the way I do it is I write down all the factors of the constant. So I can look at them because I'm a visual learner, remember. And then I'll look at the pair that gets me the middle term that I'm looking for. Now pause it and take notes right here. And then when you unpause it, kind of have these notes sitting beside you. So when we work the examples, you can kind of follow from example to notes, okay? All right, look at this first example. Here's what I'm talking about. X squared minus 3x minus 10. All right, do you see that there's a minus in front of my last term? Now remember, what does your step say over there? When there's a minus in front of that last term, when it's negative, then you've got one of each. You got a plus and a minus. So that's how I know that one parenthesis has a plus and one has a minus. Now, what goes in front? Well, it's whatever gives you this squared term. Well, the only way to get x squared is x times x. So I've got an x and an x because that's what multiplies together to give me x squared. And then I knew to do the plus and the minus because we talked about it. Now, how did I get the 2 and the 5? Well, here's how I got the 2 and the 5. Look at what that says, that third step on your note says. It says, go write down the factors and to see which pair you need. So the only things that multiply together to give me 10 that are integers are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Now, because these signs are different, when you multiply them out, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So, you know, when you're adding a positive and negative, you really end up subtracting. So I'm trying to subtract and get a 3. Well, see, which pair subtracts and gives you a 3? See, 10 minus 1 is 9, so that one's not going to work. But see, 5 minus 2 is 3, so that's the pair I'm going to pick, a 5 and a 2. But I don't know where to put the 5 and where to put the 2, so I tried them both. I tried the 2 here and the 5 there, and then I switched them. Now, how did I decide? I multiplied it out and looked. X times x is x squared. Well, x times a minus 5 is going to give me a minus 5x. And then 2 times x is a plus 2x. Well, a negative 5x plus 2x is a negative 3x. See, that one works. And then I double check, a positive 2 times a negative 5 is a negative 10. Now, look what if I tried this one first. I still would have gotten my x squared correct, but I would have had a negative 2x plus a 5x. So a negative 2x plus a 5x would have given me a plus 3x. And see, I needed a minus 3x. So that's how I knew that this one was right and that one was wrong. Okay? So see, that's what would have happened over here. I did the same thing. X squared is x times x. There's a minus, so there was one of each. And then again, I knew the pair had to subtract and give me a 3. So again, I picked the 2 and the 5, but this time I was looking for the plus 3. So that's why this one works for the plus 3x, and this one works for the minus 3x. So you try them and multiply them all the way out and see which one works. That's why it's called trial and error. You try something, if it doesn't work, if it's an error, then you try something else. All right, look at this second example. I look at my last term, now there's a plus in front of it. So look at that second step. When there's a positive, when there's a plus in front of it, your signs match. So they're either both minus or they're both plus. See, that's got a plus. How do you decide? Well, it's whatever that middle term is. If they match, then they both got to be that thing. So minus and minus. See, there was a plus, so they both match. So there's a plus in front of that middle term. They're both plus and plus. So I have x minus and x minus. I'll just write down x minus, then leave a space, and then write down x minus, then leave a space. Now, how do I know what numbers to plug in after the minus? Again, I write down the factors of my constant. Well, the factors of 20 are 1 times 20, that gives you 20. 2 times 10 gives you 20, and 4 times 5 gives you 20. Now, when you multiply this up, you're going to have a negative here and a negative here. So the signs match. So remember, when you're adding and the signs match, you really add, okay? So I'm trying to find a pair that add to 12, okay? Well, see, 1 and 20 doesn't, and 4 and 5 doesn't, but 2 and 10 adds to 20. So that's how I knew there was a 2 and there was a 10, all right? Same thing over here. I knew I needed a pair that added to 12, so I had to use the 2 and the 10, but the reason there's a plus, remember, is I knew the signs matched because of that. I knew they had to both be positive. Okay, let's look at some more. All right. Now, sometimes it may be a little different. This one looks a little different. I'm going back to the very first thing I talked about before I went to the slide. Remember, the first thing you always do is look for things that are the same. Do you see that you really have this term is one term and this term is one term? Okay, what matches? What's the same about those two things? Don't they both have an x minus 6? Do you see that? They both have an x minus 6. So I'm going to pull out the x minus 6. Well, now, what do you multiply x minus 6 by to end up with this thing? I've already got the x minus 6, but see, I'm missing that 2x. And then plus. Now, when I pull the x minus 6 out, do you see I'm missing the 4? So when I pulled x minus 6 out of those, it left me the 2x plus the 4. Now, before you're finished, keep doing. Is there anything else that matches? Do you see that nothing matches here, but both of these have a 2? So I can break it down further. I can factor it further. So I pulled a 2 out of both. Well, what do you multiply 2 by to get 2x? X. Plus, what do you multiply 2 by to get 4? 2. So this is fully factored. I can't pull any more common terms out, and I don't have a quadratic. Okay, and it doesn't matter about the order. It's just generally we tend to put numbers first, but it wouldn't matter. I wouldn't count off if you didn't. So that's fully factored. So when you do one thing, sometimes you have to do more than one thing. Okay. All right, look at this one. Now this one is a little more complicated because there are lots of ways of getting a 12y squared. You could do a 1y times a 12y, or you could do a 2y times a 6y, or you could do a 3y times a 4y. So I wrote all those possibilities on my paper first. I put a y plus and a 2y plus and then left the numbers blank. Now, why did I know it was plus? Well, now look, remember, when the sign in front of the last term is a plus, they match, and they have to be this thing. So they both got to be pluses. So I knew that's why there were pluses in both parentheses. Now, I don't know which of these to pick, but luckily the only factors of 1 are 1 and 1. So that made it easier. It had to be a 1 here and a 1 here. And then I just multiplied them up to see which one worked. See, y times 12y is 12y squared. I do y times both of these. And then y times 1 is y. Now that I've done y times both of those, now I go back and do 1 times both of those. And 1 times 12y is 12y, and 1 times 1 is 1. Well, see, 12y squared works, but y plus 12y is 6y. See, I need 7y. Okay, now you can pause the video and multiply that up and see if you get that. And you can pause the video and try it yourself and multiply that up and make sure you get this. See, 3y times 4y is 12y squared. Then 3y times 1 is 3y. 1 times 4y is 4y, and 1 times 1 is 1. Well, see, what's 3y plus 4y? Finally, I got the one that gave me the 7y. So trial and error isn't hard, but it can get kind of long, okay? Now, look at this one. Now, this one's a little different. I'm sorry. Let me go back there. This time, it's kind of out of order. I've got a number, and then the thing back here is where my squared is, but that's okay. Remember what I said. Look at the thing in front of your last term. It's minus. So that's how I knew I had one of each. I've got a plus and a minus, or a minus and a plus. It doesn't matter. How did I know that I needed an x here and an x here? Because x times x gives me x squared. Well, now how did I know what to pick here? I went ahead and did what gives you 16. Okay, well, I could do 1 and 16, and I could do 2 and 8, and I could do 4 and 4. But now remember, since it's a minus, I'm looking for a pair that are going to subtract and give me a 6. Well, see, 4 and 4 don't subtract and give you a 6. 1 and 16 don't subtract and give you a 6. 2 and 8 subtract and give you a 6. But I didn't know if the 2 went here or the 8 went there, so I tried them both ways. And then I multiplied them up to see which one got me the plus 6x. And this is the one that got me the plus 6x. So again, you can pause the video and try to multiply it yourself and see if you agree with me. Because I can work them, but I need to know that you can work them, because you're going to be working them on your test by yourself. So kind of pause the video and try those and make sure that they're okay for you. Now, remember what we went over on Wednesday. See, here's one where I'm working by trial and error, and then I will rework it with the quadratic formula. Okay, trial and error was faster. There's a plus in front, so I know that I've either got 2 minuses or 2 pluses. How did I decide there were 2 pluses? Because that middle term was a plus. So the only way to get x squared is x times x. So when there's a coefficient of 1 in front of your quadratic, it makes life a whole lot easier, okay? So I had x plus and x plus. Now, how did I know what to choose right here? Well, I went to the side. What gives you 8? 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Okay. Now remember, because the signs match, I'm going to end up adding them when I multiply them out. So I need to add them and get a 6. Which pair adds to a 6? See, 1 and 8 adds to 9, so that's not the one I need. The 2 and the 4 adds to 6. So that's how I knew it was a 2 and a 4. Now, what if I wanted to use the quadratic formula instead? Remember what I said on Wednesday, when you use the quadratic formula, it's always going to be x minus and x minus. So it doesn't go with those rules on the first slide. Quadratic formula, x minus, x minus. And then you use the quadratic formula to get the numbers to put in after the minus. So look what I did. Remember, a is the coefficient of your quadratic. So when there's not a number, it's understood to be a 1. B is the coefficient of your linear term, so it's a plus 6. And then C is your constant, so it's a plus 8. So there's my A, my B, and my C. Remember, there's your quadratic formula. Now you plug in. I need the opposite of my B. So I need the opposite of 6. So that's a negative 6. Plus or minus. Then I squared my B, so I'm going to square my 6. Minus 4, A was 1, and C was 8. So I just plugged them in. And 2A, so A is 1. So 6 squared is going to be 36. Okay? Minus, now what's 8 times 4? Well, isn't 8 times 4 going to give me 32? Okay? So I made a mistake and had to white it out. But what if I had a 32 there? What's 36 minus 32? Isn't that 4? Okay? So now I've got the square root of 4, which I know is 2. So I've got 6 plus or minus a 2. So I broke it up into negative 6 plus 2 and negative 6 minus 2 over their 2. Well, a negative 6 plus 2 is a negative 4, and the negative 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? Well, a negative 6 minus 2 more is a negative 8, and a negative 8 divided by my 2, again, I made a mistake, and I need to write that 2 down there, got me a negative 4. Well, those are my 2 answers that come from the quadratic formula. So I just took the negative 2 and put it behind them, this minus, and I took the negative 4 and put it behind that minus. But what's the same thing as minus a negative? Plus a positive. So it took me longer, but I got the same answer doing it with the quadratic formula than I would have gotten using trial and error. Okay? Now, the next section in your book talks about simplifying things. Okay? So if I'm going to simplify something, look how sometimes factoring helps. Now remember, when you're multiplying fractions, we've done that in class with numbers, you do letters, variables like you do numbers. I don't need a common denominator. But instead of multiplying this thing up and getting like a fifth, getting high powers, I'm going to try to see if I can factor it and make my powers stay low. I can factor x squared plus x minus 2 into x minus 1 times x plus 2. Now, how did I get that? Quadratic formula or trial and error. So you pause the video and go see if you can get that. There wasn't anything to pull out. Now here, the first thing I saw was they both can have an x squared, so I pulled the x squared out. But see, I can't factor that anymore. I can't do anything to the x. And again, pause the video and make sure that you knew there's a plus in front of the 2. So that means that these match, either both minus or both plus. Since there's a plus right there, they're both plus. And the only factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Now look what you've got. It's like when you had fractions with numbers. If you've got something on the top that matches something on the bottom and you're multiplying, you can divide them out and get a 1. So this x minus 2 divides this x minus 2. They divide to 1. So they're gone. So that left me this x minus 1 and this x squared and this x plus 1. But now, isn't x squared the same thing as x times x? Now, the reason I wrote it like that is so you would understand that an x can go away up here and an x can go away down there. But it's got to be when you're multiplying when you do that. They divide out. So I'm left with an x minus 1 on the top, and I'm left with an x, and then an x plus 1 quantity squared on the bottom. Now, if you want to change that to x plus 1 times x plus 1, instead of x plus 1 squared, you could. But this is an x plus 1, and that's an x minus 1, so I can't divide them out. So that's like simplified. And that's easier than multiplying all this out and getting a 3rd degree, and multiplying all that out and getting a 5th degree, and then factoring. So if you can factor before you multiply, it makes your life easier. Okay? So I hope that helps. So what I want you to do is I want you to go back and look at the homework that deals on factoring and try those. And if you have trouble with it, then I need you to contact me. Now, Monday, we'll go over the homework from Wednesday, and we'll go over the homework from Friday before we start your new material. But if you need something, just come see me. Send me an email, and we'll get you some help.